Hi YouTube, it's your boy Grassy TV. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're checking out my full build guide for the Quickslash Samurai in Season 6 of Hero Siege. The Samurai class epitomizes agility and precision. Excelling in swift melee combat, the Quickslash build focuses on enhancing the Samurai's speed and damage output, allowing players to dispatch enemies rapidly. This build really emphasizes its ability and equipment to boost your attack speed and crit chance, enabling the Samurai to become a whirlwind of steel in the battlefield. By investing in the right skills and attributes, players can maximize their efficiency in eliminating foes, making the Quickslash Samurai a formidable choice for those that are looking for that just high octane melee experience. Now, before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The guide was created during the closed beta phase of Season 6 and is based on the content mechanics that were available at that time. Please note that certain features, balance changes, or other game elements may be updated or modified as the game progresses towards official release. The information presented here may not fully reflect the final version of the game, and some aspects could be subject to change. While I strive to provide the most accurate and effective build recommendations, future adjustments by the developers may impact the viability of certain strategies and builds. Always refer to the official patch notes for the latest insights. Now, let's get started with some pros and cons of the Quickslash Samurai. First, this is an extremely fast build with built in movement skills, and your main damage is also a movement skill, which is just really fun. Your main skill also has this homing mechanic to it. So you kind of notice in the footage, jump out, push out a bunch of these minions, and these minions will actually home towards targets for you. It kind of reminds me of Holy Relic of Conviction from PoE in a weird way because it also has like an AoE on it, which is really cool. This build is also quite effective on a budget. You have solid sustain through leech mechanics. You also get a 60% increased damage taken debuff through smoke bombs. You can throw that on bosses. That's insane. You also have built in dodge chance and built in movement speed on kills. So it's a very fast character. Now, it's kind of annoying using Quickslash because it doesn't allow you to go through most like hard objects. So you are going to get stuck a lot. Like you notice in my gameplay, I get stuck on shit all the time. You do have the ability later on, you'll get teleport, which will let you teleport around. You also do have Empire Slash. However, this is getting nerfed in Season 6. Empire Slash does have a 1.25-second cooldown. You could build in some cooldown reduction in the build if you want to lower this to be able to get unstuck more often in the early game. But later on, this isn't really as big of a deal. And honestly, sometimes whenever you get stuck, you can just kind of spam your quick slash. You might notice me doing that sometimes. I just kind of spam it, let my minions go do their job, and then I'll continue on. You do have a few buttons to manage on this build. It's not terrible. You do have Blade Barrier that you have to keep up. There are a couple of other buffs that you'd want to keep up. It can be a little bit buttony, but it's really not too bad once you get the character up and going. You're just kind of blasting. You can really just hold right click and then jump over objects, and you're pretty much good. Your single target puts you within melee range. This can be a downside for some players because you're right up on targets. And your end game gear is gonna get pretty expensive. There are some items on here that are definitely very expensive in the end game, and with melee in general just being a big part of the meta, or maybe physical builds in general are going to be a big part of the meta going into Season 6. It is going to make some of these items a bit more expensive. So let's talk about some of the skills for the Quick Slash Samurai. Obviously, Quick Slash is our main skill. You're going to perform a dash. It's going to shoot out a bunch of minions. The minions are going to have an AoE on it. It's really cool. You do not get access for the minions to be jumping out of your Quick Slash until level 60. It is an augment. Blade Barrier is going to be our single target skill. This will be the blades that you kind of see spinning around my character. We use that for a single target. We have passives. Way of the Warrior will give us attack damage. Burst speed will give us movement speed on kill. Evasion will give us just pure dodge chance for melee and ranged attacks, which is really cool. Actives, you'll have Bushido. This will give you increased attack damage whenever you're missing life. Be honest with you, I don't activate this very often just because on a samurai, you have so much freaking leech that you're never going to be missing life. If there was a way that you could maybe like reserve your life, I could see this being important, but otherwise, you'll honestly never use it. Now, Live by the Sword does temporarily increase your attack speed and movement speed. You can't use this as an active, just get more speed. Same thing for Honor, will give you some attack damage and movement speed. And then last is our final movement skill. We do have Empire Slash. This is the skill that's getting a nerf. It's now has a 1.25-second cooldown, but you can use this as a way to blink early in the game before you get access to teleport. Now, if you are enjoying these build guides, I do have a donation link in the description of this video. Please consider donating to the channel. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Let's move on to the early skill trees. So for leveling, I prefer to use Blade Barrier all the way to level 100. This is a physical arcane hybrid skill, so you can scale it with physical damage, you can scale it with arcane damage. I highly recommend that you scale it with the physical portion because you can leech on physical damage, you cannot leech on arcane damage, so it's just going to make it feel way better to level with, especially if you get like a comfy life pool and you have some, decent attack damage weapons and physical damage. It's just going to feel really comfy. You're going to get hit by something, you'll just especially because Blade Barrier is a melee range skill. Like you're up on targets, especially early in the acts, like Acts 3, when you have the bat boys that are shooting bats at you and you're right on top of them. Like this can really, really help with those situations. So we're gonna want to mainly scale that physical portion, but in the first couple of acts, you can actually put on some arcane damage. This will still give the skill damage. So that's completely up to you. So you'll look for sources of both physical and flat early on, but as you scale into like the later acts of normal and you get a nightmare and such, you're gonna completely drop the arcane side of it. Now, so at level 1, we're gonna put all of our points into level 7. Just give this as much juice as we can. What's really cool about Blade Barrier is it's just an active. You press it, it goes, it spins. You don't have to use mana. It's not channeling mana. It's a very cheap skill, so you really don't have to do too much to kind of get your damage going. At level 8, we're just gonna continue blasting all of our points into Blade Barrier. I do like to put 1 point into quick slash over here on the left. This will allow us to dash around, and then we'll put 1 point into Fan and Ice just because it does give us some auxiliary damage, but it's not that important. At level 16, we're just going to max out our Blade Barrier. And then once we hit level 30, we are going to put 1 point into Empire Slash just to give you some additional movement. This is optional if you just prefer to use Quick Slash or you just don't want the extra button. You don't have to put a point there. The rest we're going to put into Battle Glance. This is a synergy for Blade Barrier. So it's a way that we can give Blade Barrier additional attack damage without putting points into it. We're putting it into a synergy. So whenever you read a skill at the bottom, it'll have all of its synergies. Those are skills that you will want to put points into to give it additional damage. At level 60, we'll have our Battle Glance maxed out. Then we're going to put the rest into Omni Slash. Once again, just a synergy. At level 80, you'll max out your Omni Slash, put 1 point into Honor, 1 point into Burst of Speed, the rest into Way of the Warrior. And then our final level 100 tree for Blade Barrier is going to be 1 point Evasion, 1 point Smoke Bomb, 1 point Warrior Spirit, 1 point Bushido, 1 point Way of the Spirit. You will have some leftover points. You can kind of spend them how you want to. I like to dump them into Warrior Spirit for more attack speed and movement. This is completely up to you. Once we switch into Quick Slash, I do have that tree available here. You'll just max your Quick Slash, max Battle Glance, max Shriek and Throw. I like to put all my points into Warrior Spirit just to get more attack speed. And then there's a ton of like 1 point wonders in here, right? You get the movement speed on kill, you get the attack damage, you get, you can from there just dump the rest of your points into evasion just to give you some additional dodge chance. Now, for sub skill trees, if you're not familiar with them, they were a new feature in season 5. These are going to allow you to spec into a skill a bit more. You can see in the top right of each skill, you have this plus sign. You'll just simply click on that, and it's going to open up this new window to give you an actual tree. So you can gain 1 point for every 5 character levels that you have, for every 5 character levels of your character. So you can reset this tree anytime for free. So it's up to you to really experiment, kind of figure out what you like in this sub skill tree. I do have some recommendations on them just to get the most out of them. A big thing to remember here with these sub skill trees is you get them for every 5 character levels. So you can use them as you're leveling up, right? So for Blade Barrier, this tree is going to focus on granting you 100% blade barrier uptime, as well as give you the maximum blades. The uptime is a really, really good quality of life. You need 3 points in this left node here. This will give you 100% uptime. Don't forget to put 1 point into Curse of Blades on this far right here. This is going to allow us to proc our augment, right? This is what you can see whenever I'm using the blade barrier in the footage. I have a bunch of like blades that fire out everywhere. That's this augment, but it does not work consistently if you do not put 1 point into Curse Blades, right? It is required. Here's our Quick Slash setup. This is really just for AoE farming. This isn't the best single target. It's really just meant to blast around with and have really good AoE. The main thing here is put points in this top left for the augment, and then make sure you put points in this far right for the clones, 100% clone. For Empire Slash, since it was given a 1.25 second cooldown, we mainly just use it as a blink. So I do put a bunch of points into this attack speed buff here. This is a multiplicative attack speed, not a percentual, as well as we have increased teleport range. For Smoke Bomb, this is going to turn Smoke Bomb into a debuffing skill. This will give you 60% increased damage taken on monsters. It's going to put a armor break debuff on them as well. This will give them a a debuff where they're going to take another 50% increased damage, right, from your physical damage. And then you can also grab these burning nodes where you inflict burning. And then if you get sources of extra damage to burning monsters on your build, you can do an additional 50% increased damage. Excuse me, you can do an additional damage to burning targets, which they messed up. For Shadow Step, this is a teleport ability that can pull monsters. The main place that I use this is on Gurag, right? You can stand like right in front of Gurag and you can hit Shadow Step and it'll pull all of his little minion boys in the bottom of the zone up to you. So it's just a way that you can kind of pixel stack minions if you'd like to, or pixel stack enemies. Moving on to our attribute allocation, while you're leveling with Bay Barrier, it's honestly not an expensive skill, so you're really not going to need that much energy. I do recommend maybe at the start of the game that you do put a couple points in energy just to make sure that you don't run out. Like maybe you use your Blade Barrier skill and you have no mana on kill, you have no leech, you have nothing, you have a really small mana pool, and for whatever reason you just don't replenish enough to be able to use it again, or just over time you just whittle it down because you have no sustain. So maybe a couple of points into energy early until you can get a mana on kill or a mana leech item, right? Even just getting like a 1% mana leech on a charm is going to be enough here. So you'll put 2 points into strength, 2 points into vitality to really maximize the amount of life that you have to your damage. Honestly, with Blade Barrier, you can almost just dump everything into vitality and just go big, thick tank boy. That's what I like to do, especially whenever I'm fighting the bosses because generally you have enough damage. You just need to be able to sustain through the fights. Now, after you swap to Quickslash, nothing changes here. You'll do 2 points strength, 2 points vitality, enough energy to feel comfortable. A big thing about Quickslash and just this build in general, you are attacking a lot, like a lot. So you're going to be using a lot of energy. And if you don't have the targets and you're not leeching, you can run out of mana fairly quickly. So it might be within your best interest with a few points into energy just to have more than 100 mana. It kind of depends on where you're at in the game. Like if you have some items on that are giving you all attributes, then you probably have a bigger mana pool to start with. So just kind of gauge how your build feels. If you need to put some points in energy, do that. And then in the end game, if you're playing softcore, dump everything into strength. If you're playing hardcore, then obviously you might go full vitality. Moving on to the gearing section, this is really designed to give you workable suggestions on what gear to acquire at different stages of the game. You as a player need to look at your current gear and figure out what options work best for you. It's really up to you to experiment here because there's some item prop combos and different things in the game that haven't really been discovered yet. So let's start with our weapons. Generally speaking, for weapons, we're just looking for normal through mythic weapons that have certain affixes on them that make sense for our build. So you can see we have physical skills, we have physical skill damage, just as flat damage. You have movement speed, attack speed, life amount on kill, leech, energy, strength. Excuse me. I don't know why on all these guides I have strength as 1%, int is 1% magic skill damage. 1% strength is 1% attack damage. Okay, dude. Sir, I can't even type. Okay. Moving on. So yeah, we're looking for really any sources of these affixes on items to really help scale up our damage. Now, for rune ward options, you can go with the Sky Song. This is a four socket weapon. You can make this in a two-handed sword or a one-handed sword. Be perfectly fine. I do recommend that you go make a malice. Currently in season 5, and currently as of the recording of this video in season 6, you can go on a demon slayer. Right, the weapon that is on the ground on a demon slayer is a three socket two-handed sword, right? You can make a malice in that and you can use it at level 15. It has like 100 attack damage on it and you can use that to blast. You literally use it all the way through normal until you get to nightmare where you farm out your next S tier base or your A tier base. So go do that. It might not be available at the start of season 6. We don't know that, but as of right now, you can still do this, and it's a really, really strong way just to blast through the early game on any Fizz build. For offhands, again, looking for these same stats: life percentages, resistances, movement speed, skills, all that sort of stuff. You can also make a divine contemplation if you decide to go for a one-handed weapon. This will give you a ton of resistances. Just need to look for a 3 socket shield. You could also go for a Sky Song and a shield, just gives you some skills, some attack speed, mana. I mean, this is an okay option if you just want to make one. For helmets, same sort of deal, just looking for any sort of affixes on helmets. Of course, if you find any low level Satanics, this will be fun as well. Be sure you try and find a source of leech somewhere in the build. I don't care where it's at, if it's on a ring, if it's on an amulet, if it's on gloves, if it's on charms, if it's wherever you can find it, get a source of life and mana leech. It'll make your life a million times better. So for rune words, we do have Scholar, super cheap, Urtzal, gives you a skill, some physical damage reduction. Right. Flesh Ripper better. It gives you up to 20% all resistances, leech, crit chance, attack speed, everything that we want. It's really, really good helmet to get early on. For chest pieces, we have, the same typical stuff for mythics through or normal through mythic items, right? And we also have Shadow. Shadow is a good early rune word. It's a Toll and Eth rune. It only takes 2 socket armor. Super easy to make, but it does give you a ton of movement speed, which is really nice to get early in the game. Gloves, just looking for enhanced damage is probably the biggest thing that you can find on gloves early because it's enhanced damage will directly increase the attack damage of your weapon. So very, very strong to get enhanced damage. Also looking for sources like attack speed, crit damage. For boots, try to prioritize your movement speed. This is going to help you go through zones faster. But finding like attack speed on boots can be really nice as well. Uh, Now, I would recommend making quick steps. You can use these as early as level 31. So you just need a Yim and a Del rune. This gives you a shitload of movement speed, an absolute dumb amount of movement speed. You get a lot of attack speed. You get life leech. You get some energy. Really, really nice boots to make them. For belts, typical stuff here. Looking for attack speed, crit damage, that sort of thing. Same thing for rings. Getting enhanced damage on rings is very strong. You can get like a 80, 100% enhanced damage on a ring, and it will really help carry you. Same thing for amulets, crit damage, attack speed, enhanced damage, all fantastic stuff. Got attack speed twice. For charms, physical. Yo, who writes these guides? Uh, this is a physical skill damage plus the skills. So physical damage is flat for attacks, right? They've changed that in season 6 where you can now get flat damage to physical skills instead of it just being additive damage and it scales with multipliers. Looking for sources of attack speed because attacking more is a more damage multiplier, right? Looking for things like sustain, looking for strength that we can get additional attack damage, right? And enhanced defense is really a underrated affix. This increases your defense. It increases your chance to dodge attacks and projectiles. So very, very strong. All right. So once we hit level 60, it's going to be very important to make sure that you find a good weapon. If you have a doo-doo weapon, you're going to do doo-doo damage. So at this point, you should already be in Nightmare. If you're not, get to Nightmare before you swap to Quickslash. I do recommend that you farm Act 1 Rat Den in the outskirts of Anoia and try and find some of these early rune word bases to make strong items. Do not swap to Quickslash unless you have an S tier base weapon rune word at the bare minimum. I do recommend that you don't even swap to Quickslash at level 60. If you really want to, I'll show you what you would need to do that. But I wouldn't recommend you do this until at least level 100 because you'll have your total, your 3 minions instead of one. So you're going to look for a Sky Song, a Ravager, or Aurora's Might. You can make these in swords. These are all fantastic options to get on an S tier base. Same thing for helmets, Flesh Ripper. You need to have a Flesh Ripper to give you the attack speed and the crit chance. This is really going to help with your damage as well as you'll get 20% all resistances. Any of these helmets will also be perfectly fine. Something like a Judge Jury Executioner. This has up to 50 ignore target defense. This will really help with making sure that you're hitting enemies. For chess pieces, you're going to need to start figuring out your resistances. You can go with a Mayhem or a Gladstone Goose. Either one of these will give you a ton of resistances. For gloves, you need to try and find some enhanced damage gloves that have either crit or crit damage on them. I mean, honestly, just getting the enhanced damage is enough, but trying to find some additional stuff on there can really help. Same thing for boots. You want to have quick steps. These are just so cheap. Make sure you have these belts, crit damage, um, life, attack speed. Any of that stuff is really good to get on. Attack damage is really good to get on a belt. Rings, same thing, looking for enhanced damage rings. If you can get crit damage, any of that sort of stuff on top of it, it's just a cherry on the top. Same thing for amulets. Try to look for an enhanced damage amulet. If you can get some of these other affixes, just a cherry on the top. And same thing for charms. You really, really want to try to build into as much enhanced damage on these items as you can. It will make such a drastic difference in your damage. Now, once we hit level 100, there aren't best in slot gear choices at this point. Most of these items can be swapped out for strong mythics. So items decisions should revolve around how your character feels over direct power upgrades. We're really just trying to get you through Hell One, so you can unlock Satanic Zones. You can start farming different things for your character. So you could really put a combination of any of these items together, and it would make the build feel capable of completing Hell difficulty and begin pushing. Now, for your weapons, you need to start looking for superior, exceptional, astral, quantum bases to make your rune words on. Hopefully, you can get these with enhanced damage, all skills, attack speed, attack damage, strength based on level. Any of this stuff is fantastic to get on a base just to give you some additional damage. If you're not familiar with these bases, there's quality to bases. Currently in season 5, there's only superior and exceptional. Moving into season 6, you'll have superior, exceptional, astral, and quantum. Superiors will have one affix on them, exceptionals will have two, astrals will have three, and quantum will have four affixes on those bases, which can make for some really fucked up weapons. Now, you are going to want to look for a base that has around 300 to 400 attack damage on a two-hander. If you decide to go for a one-hander with the shield, you'll want around 250 to 300 attack damage on that one-hander. These would be fantastic to make or rune words in. And again, we are looking to try and make either a Sky Song or a Ravager. I recommend the Ravager just because it has a shitload more attack speed, which will give you more attacks per second, as well as you get 25% ignore target defense. It's just overall much better than the Sky Song, but it does take a Mal and an and a goal. So you're gonna need a bit more runes for it. Now, if you end up going for a you end up going for a set or a heroic option. So the Nomad Sand Slicer is going to give you some movement speed, right? It'll give you 40% ignore target defense. You could save up some early gold to buy this. This is actually a really nice two-handed sword. Same thing for Shadow Carver. You can actually farm this from any hell difficulty Shadow Reaper. So it is going to take 40 dimensional shards, which is quite a bit to get early on in the game, but you could grind out for one of these. This honestly, putting this weapon on will push you into Hell 3 instantly. It's a very, very strong weapon with some other gear, with some enhanced damage stuff like rings and amulets and gloves and some other gear on top of it. This would easily push you into Hell 5. Moving on to helmets. You really want to have that Flesh Ripper. It's going to help a lot with your crit chance. If you're running the Shadow Carver, you won't run the Flesh Ripper because crit chance doesn't matter anymore. So any of these helmets would be fantastic. I personally like Judge Jury Executioner just because I like getting that ignore target defense when I'm playing the a crit version of the build. Yeah. So, but any of these would be just fine. For chest pieces, wrong one. For chest pieces, we have Cocoon of the Berserker. If you can pick up one of these super early, they're really nice. You get up to 3 sockets, you get enhanced damage, you get skills, you get double leech, you get pack rating. You really get everything that you need early on. You're probably not going to be able to afford these. These will be fairly expensive early, so you'll want to make either a Gladstone Goose or a Mayhem just to help you through resistances. Gloves, I like Siege Breakers because they give up to 25 all res, some enhanced damage, and as well as 25% ignore target defense. Very nice. You can run any of these gloves. They're all fantastic. You could also just get like a super high enhanced damage pair of gloves. Those would be really good as well. Same for boots. Quick steps, fantastic. I don't really know if I would switch to Arena Masters or Hermes just because like you just get everything you need out of this. The only reason I could see myself switching into a Hermes is you get up to 40% all resistances, and in season 6 getting resistances is going to be much harder, so this could really help. For belts, Brute Cord is my belt of choice. You get 10% crit chance, crit damage, 20% ignore target defense. Very nice belt. The next best option to me would be Butcher's Belt. You get up to 30% all resistances with up to 3 skills. This is very nice as well. You could also just find a really fucked up mythic belt and wear that. Otherwise, here's a couple of other options. Knight's Girdle, Commander Sash, can give you some physical damage reduction, up to 20% all resistances. Turbo Belt, some attack speed and Deadly Blow. Deadly Blow is actually fairly important. It's one of the only belts that's going to do that, so that's really nice. For rings, I would recommend that you rock double Kodo wedding bands. These will give you skills with up to 30% movement speed, life percent. Very nice. You could also go for a ring of the cow raven, this is gonna give you 8% crit chance and crit damage. These are really nice as well if you rock two of these. Elven Graces is gonna be your best option here. However, the drop rate of them has been nerfed for season 6, so it's gonna be much harder to find them. It's gonna make them a bit more expensive to get. You could also just get really high enhanced damage rings, especially if you're wearing that Shadow Carver. You're not gonna care about any of the crit versions. You just want to get a lot of enhanced damage. Same thing for amulets. Ravenclaw can be your best option. They nerf the drop rate of it. It's gonna be harder to find. It's gonna be a bit more expensive. If you can find one, it's very nice crit chance, crit damage, everything that you kind of want here. Another good option would be All Seeing Eye. This will give you +3 skills with up to 50% magic find. If you're wearing that Shadow Carver, you would wear an All Seeing Eye, or you could find just a really high enhanced damage mythic would be really good as well. For charms, we are looking for just different affixes on our mythic charms, trying to round out our resistances, getting life, getting attack speed, movement speed, leech, or sustain, crit damage, and an enhanced damage on charms is so freaking strong to helping your damage. Make sure you're looking out for enhanced damage on charms. I do have a bunch of satanic charms listed here. These aren't directly early game buys, but they can make a drastic difference early if you are able to find them or pick them up. So I do have these listed out here as some options for you to look out for. All right, moving into the mid game for physical attackers, maximizing your DPS is going to require balancing multiple attributes. In this section, we're going to detail out the different systems that you're going to need to improve your DPS. Now, first is your attack damage. This is the total damage of your weapon after calculations. In the example below, that you can see that we have 80 to 95 roll on this weapon. It rolled 91, and then we multiplied this 91 by the enhanced damage of the weapon, giving us a total of 851 enhanced damage. This number is extremely important to your overall DPS. This is why I'm telling you to get enhanced damage everywhere, because it's directly affecting this number here. All of your skills are the damage of your skills are going off of the attack damage of your weapon. So if you have a do number here, you are not going to do damage. So making rune words on bases that have like enhanced damage rolls on them or just extra juice on top of them just makes them that much stronger because they're getting more attack damage on them. Now, using the same example, you can see that the base has a 1.75 attacks per second base. We then multiply this by the attack speed of the weapon, making it 4.79 attacks per second. So you can see that increased attack speed is a local mod whenever you put it on weapons. That's why finding things like moonstones or making moonstones or finding nut runes or finding jewels with attack speed, any of that stuff can really beef up the attack speed of your weapon because they're adding local attack speed to that weapon. Sources of increased attack speed on other pieces of gear is percentual and is calculated using 1 APS. So if you find 20% attack speed gloves, you're gaining zero point 0.2 attacks per second to your weapon because it's based on 1 APS. Ignore target defense is also really important for managing your hit chance. So monsters have a defense rating in which they can dodge your attacks. Currently, you can have up to 75% ignore target defense, right? So you have a 75% chance of ignoring this defense rating. So you want to get this maxed out as fast as you can. If you are running Shadow Carver, you don't need to worry about this as much. Just you can't miss on a Shadow Carver. But at that point where you want to switch out of the Shadow Carver and start pushing into a crit variant of this, you will need ignore target defense to really help with hitting monsters. Now, if you want to scale your damage to high values, you're going to need that crit chance and crit damage, right? That's what will blast physical attackers into really high DPS numbers. Understand that you can get your crit chance to 95%, and crit damage does not have a cap. So you can get as much crit damage as you want. A very important stat to manage is also your deadly blow. This increases your physical damage by 50%. And since this is a full physical build, getting 50% increased physical damage is kind of fucked up, right? You can obtain 100% deadly blow, meaning all of your hits will do 50% increased physical damage. And another way that we can kind of work with scaling our damage is crushing blow. This will put armor break on monsters, stacking up to 5 times. This will make them take 10% increased damage per stack. So it'll be 50% increased damage from this crushing blow. If you're fighting bosses, having sources of open wounds will cause them to bleed for 20% of their physical damage. And this is useful on those tankier targets and bosses. You'll get some open wounds just around the build in general, but it's not directly something that we build into for this character. And for those of you that are nerds that want to see the actual damage formula, it's a little hard to see, but I do have that listed here. It's also on the Hero Siege helper site. You can find this information as well if you'd like to read through it. So let's talk about weapons, right? There's going to be multiple viable weapon choices for the build, each bringing unique strengths and trade offs. Some options will prioritize raw damage, while others are going to enhance your attack speed, critical strikes, extra damage, or other utility. Understanding the advantages and limitations of each weapon type will allow you to tailor the build to your preferred playstyle, whether it will be maximizing burst damage, sustained DPS, or mobility in combat. Now, Thorn of Noxus is new to Season 6. This has an extremely high level of attack damage, skills, deadly blow, ignore target defense, attack damage, up to 6 sockets. Something to note on this weapon, though, it does minus, now I think it's 100%, but it's minus damage dealt with skills that have a cooldown. So our Blade Barrier single target skill will not work with this weapon. You will not do damage wearing this weapon with Blade Barrier. Okay. This is mainly used for our Quickslash to give it single target. This is actually a decent option for it, especially when you socket some jewels, right? That can give some attack speed in there. Will really help scale up the APS of the weapon. This can be a decent option if you end up dropping one or you fall into one. Lucy's Day is also fantastic. You get 75% ignore target defense just off the rip, so you don't have to worry about your chance to hit as much. You also get decent attacks per second, and a ton of extra damage to bleeding monsters. This is a very strong stat to scaling up your damage. Next would be our glow stick. This is mainly used for the high APS of it. You can see on this glow stick, we have 4.79 attacks per second. That's what you see me using generally in the footage, right? I'm using a glow stick to be able to zoom around with. So this is very, very fun to farm with. It's not going to be your best single target option. Kind of the same with Blood Moon Crest. You can find this with, you can actually find this with physical skills now in Season 6. Items can now drop with physical skills. So this Almond Raw is, this is an Almond Raw exclusive drop. So the one hander has a ton of attack damage on it, has a ton of movement speed. It has skill movement diminish, which is kind of a rare mod. Doesn't really matter for us too much. But using this weapon will open up your offhand to be able to use a shield to gain some resistances or some block. And then last we have Scarred Battle Darts. This is another decent option. It's a one hander. If you end up falling into one of these, they'll probably be fairly cheap at the start of a season. You can get some decent attack damage on it. You get some skills. You get some crit. And this can be okay as well. I don't prefer this just because there's some things certain skills you can't use this with, but it can be okay as well. And then last, you still have your Sky Song, you still have your Ravager. If you end up dropping like a crazy Astral or Quantum base, you could still run this Ravager. Could be kind of screwed up. Go with that as well. And I do recommend that you run a Shadow Carver at the beginning. You're just having a hard time getting crit damage to make running the crit build worth your time. I would go for Shadow Carver. This will make it so that you don't need to worry about your crit and crit damage, and you can get a shitload of attack damage on this weapon. You get up to 4 sockets. You can put some attack speed in it to up the attacks per second. You cannot miss on this weapon, and it gives you a huge increased attack damage proc with Reaper's Calling. So very, very nice. For helmets, we're going to want to make a Legionnaire. This is what is going to be our really our best option at this point. You get skills on it. You get 25% deadly blow. You get double leech, attack damage. Just everything about it is really nice. You also get a chance to gain live by the sword, which is going to give you some attack damage and speed. Really nice. Uh, if you are running the Shadow Carver variant, you can also make a Chimera. Right, this is kind of a bridge between the Flesh Ripper that you're most likely wearing right now and Legionnaire. Right, this will have a couple skills on it: attack speed, deadly blow. It's kind of like I said, it's a bridge between the two. And then if you end up finding a 2 socket helm that maybe has some skills on it or something, you could run a Delirium. This can give you up to 8 skills plus whatever you have on the base. So you can get 13 skills on a helmet. That's also really insane. And then if you happen to pick one up for cheap or drop it, Nikita's up to 5 skills, 40% deadly blow can take care of a huge amount of that. Ignore target defense, attack damage. Just can be a decent option as well. For chess pieces, Executioner's Cocoon is your best offensive option. This is everything you need. 275 enhanced damage, 28 all res up to four sockets. Excuse me, the 28 all res is coming from the four sockets. The attack rating, double lead, very, very nice. Fortress is also a very offensive chest, kind of a watered down version of Executioner's Cocoon. This will give you up to 250 enhanced damage. You get some deadly blow. You get some all res. You get life. Like, it's also just a really nice chest, and it only takes a Zo rune, which is a very low high rune. Now you could also run Heaven's Might. I actually was running this for quite a while in my hardcore run. So it gives up to four skills with six sockets, a bunch of physical and magical damage reduction. It's a very, very nice chest. Same for Rosarius. This is fantastic for hardcore. You get a ton of extra damage to stunned monsters, up to five skills, four sockets, all damage reduced, and up to 50% all resistance. It's just fantastic. It's fantastic. For gloves, you do have Brawler Fighter Mitts. With the proc on there, this will give you a ton of additional attack damage and 40 up to 40 strength. This is also 40 attack damage. So a very strong pair of gloves. If you run into alley boxing gloves, these can be decent as well. For boots, we have Crush Fleets. There's really nothing better here. Crush Fleets are fantastic. You get this agility proc, which gives you a shitload of attack speed and movement speed. Just very, very nice. Everything else in here is just fantastic. We need all of it. For belts, we have Belt of Skulls. This is decent. You get some deadly blow. You get movement speed. You get extra damage of bleeding monsters. You get attack damage. Decent belt. Your best belt here is going to be a Gladiator King's belt. You will have to farm Hell 5 King Rakul in order to drop this, but it is a fantastic belt. For rings, we have Elven Graces. This is going to be your best ring for quite a while if you're on the crit version, as they're going to give you a ton of crit chance and crit damage. If you're not on the crit version, just running enhanced damage rings is going to be your best bet. You can get Destroyer's Ends, but they're moved to Inferno difficulty, and those bosses have a lot of life. So you can go for Destroyer's Ends. These are going to be really good crit options as well. That's up to you. Now, you can find mythic rings with like enhanced damage, crit damage, that sort of thing. Getting all of these stats on a mythic ring is going to be a bit difficult, but it is possible. And then the last option is going to be grinding out for an Anubis Soul Gem and placing it in a +3 Azazel's Despair. So Azazel's Despair's drop rate has actually been buffed in season 6. It is now 1 in 11,000 rolled 9 times. So it used to be 1 in 15,000 rolled 8 times at one point. So it's definitely, they're trying to make it a bit easier without making it free. Now, you will want to have a +3 Azazels. You're not going to put in an Anubis Soul Gem and a +2 Azazels. And Azazel's Despair has been nerfed in its drop rate, so it's going to be harder to find one, and they're going to be a bit more expensive. But these rings are best in slot. They're insane. You will want to get one at some point. If you do end up finding one, you're able to make an Azazel's. Try and farm out a Rakul Ritual Band from Hell 5 King Rakul in the Chaos Towers. This will allow you to mirror your other rings. You can have two of them without having to farm a second Azazel's. And right, moving on to amulets, Griffin Claw. Fantastic. It's basically an upgraded Raven Claw. If you are still using that Shadow Carver, just look for a high ED uh, amulet. You could also just run an Eagle Claw. This comes from Luna, right? So you can try and farm Luna for an Eagle Claw. Very good as well. For charms, um, really getting sources of crit chance and crit damage on your charms is going to be extremely important to your character's output DPS. Look for charms that have these stats. If you're super lucky, you can find crazy ones like this charm here that has enhanced damage and crit damage on it. Good luck with that. But these can happen. It's right. You could also, if you're playing trade, you could try and buy one. They're very strong. With resistances changing for season 6, you're going to want to use a Tablet of the Awakening with 4 Umrins in it. This is going to provide up to 34% all resistances for just a 2x2. 34% all res is a lot going into season 6, especially if you're going to be wearing a two-handed weapon. It's going to be much harder to cap your reses. So I do recommend that you get a tablet with res in there. Once you have your reses figured out, you could also just run elemental gems to get some additional attributes. Now, some of these charms I had listed in the budget section, but they're still very useful even in the mid game. So I am going to list these here once again for you to check out, especially like this Beetle of Life, Anubis Ankh, and Hardened Steel Defender. Like this combo together provides so much freaking life. Now, when it comes to endgame and maxing a character, there's got a lot of variables to consider, as well as people have different playstyles and goals with their characters. So, starting in season 6, here Siege will have a new item called the Satanic Crystal. When cubed with an item, it will either add a new affix or destroy your item. This takes min maxing a character really to a whole new level. As of right now, I do not have a list of possible corruptions, so my gear recommendations are not going to include them. This section is going to include a build I use for endgame testing, but it can still be pushed further with the season 6 features or mythics that I was unable to obtain. This in-game build is really a result of my testing and refinement. I can confidently vouch for its effectiveness. However, builds are always subject to change, as well as they have personal preference. Their specific encounters you might change up with, involving strategies. There may be more optimal variations depending on your playstyle, the zones that you're tackling, or the bosses that you're facing. Feel free to experiment and adapt. The guide serves as a strong foundation, but the build is best when it works for you. Now, this in-game build is a result of my testing and refinement, and I can confidently vouch for its effectiveness. However, builds are always subject to personal preference, specific encounters, and evolving strategies. There may be more optimal variations depending on your playstyle, the zones you're tackling, or the bosses that you're facing. Feel free to experiment and adapt. This guide does serve as a strong foundation, but the best build is the one that will work for you. Here's a quick glance at the items that I'm using. And then I will hover over all of the selections. You can read what they are. Again, this is not going to be this is the absolute best everything, right? It really just kind of depends on different things that you want from the build, right? You could go with more attack speed, you could go with more damage, you could go for a single target setup, you could go for there's definitely a lot of situations. This is the one that I found made the most sense for me. I could just weapon swap. I had all my speed, and then I would weapon swap. I had all my front bar damage. I didn't need to do any gear swaps to fight bosses. Made the most sense for. Now, looking at our relics, we do have Twin Blade, Nunchucks, Razor Blade, Butterfly Knife. These are the best relics you'll be able to get once you're in the crit build. Whenever you're in the Shadow Carver variant, unfortunately, your relics aren't really going to do too much, right? You might get a bit of attack speed out of them. That's about it. But once you switch into the crit version, you're going to want these four relics. There's really nothing better. Triforce has been nerfed to 10 all res now. It's not worth even taking, in my opinion. Potions, we have Elixir of Death, gives us enhanced damage. Rad Bull gives us attack speed and movement speed. Unworldly Cognition will give us XP. This is now an SS tier potion. Witch's Potions are going to give us life and mana. Golden Lade Mysterious Potions will give us Angelic SS tier. And this is now an SS Angelic Potion, but this will give us Magic Find and Gold Find. 50 Bottle of Vodka will give us all skills. And Bottle of Rad will give us increased movement speed and phasing. For chest augments, Berserker Rage is going to be your best one. It's going to give you the most damage. However, it does decrease your all resistances. So if you don't have a way to cap your res now, getting Berserker Rage isn't going to make it feel any better. Would not recommend this for hardcore. Your next best bet would be Tempest Strikes. This will give you an absolute shitload of attack speed. And then Lethal Tempo got buffed in season 6. It now has a crit damage a value to it. It's 8% per level. So 56% total crit strike damage, as well as you get some attack speed. And then Survivor Shield's good if you're in hardcore. It'll give you a cheat death. For hero levels, I do have a full guide on how to spec your hero level tree. This tree generally provides utility over character power, so it can be quite situational. This video is going to describe the different paths that you might take based on your character situation. Me personally, for physical attackers, I always rush charm slots just because I want as much enhanced damage from my charm slots as I can get. But you might have a different, route that you would like to take, as well as in the description of this video, we'll have a link to all of the glyphs. These will offer additional utility to enhance your gameplay. There's no direct player power at a glyph, so they're making selections on these are really just going to be preference based, and it's going to depend on the content that you want to engage with instead of it being like what's the best glyph, right? So I will have a link to this in the description. For mercenaries, we're going to use the Act One Knight Mercenary. Currently in season 6, mercenaries only have one purpose. They're just magic find aura bots, and the merc really hopefully in the future we'll be able to get a bit more utility out of mercenaries, but right now we're just trying to stack as much magic find on them as we can and keep them alive. So you can see we have damage reduction, we have life per hit, we have life regen, we have some armor, just helps them stay alive. Now, early on for weapons, you might want to run a Aura's Might. This is going to give you a huge aura for resistances. However, if your Merc dies, you'll no longer have that res. So if you're playing hardcore, I would not recommend this. But this can be a good way to cap out your resistances early. You are going to want to move into a Valkyrie at some point. This will give you a huge attack speed aura is your more damage option. Now, once you get into the end game min max versions of the build, this is going to be completely useless, right? The amount of diminishing return that is going to hit your character from the amount of attack speed that you have everywhere, this isn't going to be worth it. I would just go for one of these magic mind options, right? And throw Istrins in them. Same thing for chests. These are just magic mind chests, put Istrins in them. Same thing for helmets, just magic find helmets. We're gonna put Istrins in them. The bucket is now an SS tier. It has up to 5 sockets with some extra magic find. And for offhands, any of these will be just fine. Leprechaun Greed is gonna be an SS tier now. It's I got buff. I don't know if it has 5 or 6 sockets. Just put Istrins in any of these as well. For loot filters, I'll quickly explain how to add a filter in less than 30 seconds. First, you'll press escape, go to options, gameplay, loot filter. On the right side here, you're going to see these highlight presets. We're going to select physical attacker. This is going to ensure that you're highlighting affixes on items that make sense for your build. They'll be a different color. They'll have a beam on them. Really nice. Now, on the same screen, you'll see that there's filter settings. So you're just going to select the preset based on what difficulty you're currently in. So if you're in normal, you'll click on normal. If you're in nightmare, you'll click on nightmare. If you're in early hell, you'll click on early hell. Right? That's going to be the easiest way to manage a filter. I will have a link to all of my filters for season 6 in the description of the video. I'm working on that, but I will have some filters that you can use at the start of a season for based on any archetype that you're playing. You will have to set that filter up yourself, but I show you how to set that filter up and what I would do if I was playing that archetype. So I will have that available soon. Now, some additional helpful resources if you're new to Hero Siege or just a returning player, you want some additional information. I will have this next whole section is just going to be a bunch of different resources to help you with leveling, it through the end game, whatever it may be. The first is my beginner guide. If you're brand new to Hero Siege, I do have a link to my ultimate beginner guide. It's a 2.5 hour video with timestamps to pretty much anything and everything that you want to know from how to log into the game to what are angelic keys. So be sure you check that out. Before you do get started in Hero Siege, be sure to equip your companion. Everybody gets one of those for free. Set up your highlight filter. Configure your controls. Here is a snippet of mine. I do suggest that you change your minimap hotkey to tab. This will make your minimap overlay permanent like D2 and PoE. Swap your FPS to 60 FPS. Trust me, your performance will be much better. And then in order to assign a skill to your bar, you're just going to click on this bottom right click, and then you hover over skills and press what hotkey you want them on. So if I wanted to change, this skill to Q, I would just hover over it and press Q and it would switch it. Now, to in order to level efficiently in Hero Siege, there's something called additive damage and skill damage. Additive damage is literally when your weapon hits an right? Skill damage is the damage of your actual skill. So coming into season 6, skill damage will now work with multipliers for even physical damage. You can find like, +7 to physical damage, and that will be a skill damage to physical skills. So that is going to be really strong for pumping up your damage. Every 7 to 11 skill damage is basically one skill. Additive damage cannot be multiplied with multipliers. It is just a flat amount that's added on top. So you can use sources of additive damage early on to kind of help with your damage, but they're going to start to fall off fairly quickly once you get into the early mid game, essentially. Now, if you are leveling up, I do have a list here of just different places in the game that you can go to farm out some gear and some experience if you want to over level for a boss or if you just want to try and find some better gear. So here's the places I would recommend in normal. Here's the places I would recommend in Nightmare in Hell. It's generally the same places. You have Rat Den, you have 3-3, you have Sand Cave, you have some people like to go to the storage arm dungeon and Steam Train as well. That could be another good one. It's basically just finding places with good density, right? Any of these dungeons are fantastic. Now, there are no required quests in Hero Siege, but there are some that can give you some early gear, some early items to help make some early rune words and things like that. So your Act One normal, Act One nightmare, Act One hell quests. These are super important. They give you runes up to Vex rune, super strong to be able to make those early rune words. I do recommend that you also get the movement speed charm and the movement speed potion from Act One. These quests take no amount of time, as well as the quest in Act One nightmare and the quest in Act One hell. There's only one of them, right? So it takes 0 time at all to get up to a Vex rune. Season 6 right now is expected to start on March 14th. This is their target date. It is not an official release date. So I do have a link to the live season 6 patch notes in the description of the video. You can check out what's going on for the new season. Ton of fun stuff. I do recommend giving that a read, as well as I have a link to the official Hero Siege wiki available. This is managed by some of the mods and community members within the Hero Siege community. So there's a ton of really good information here if you need some additional resources. Once you hit level 100, I do have a early game tips and tricks video. This will help you with your early game progression. If you're feeling lost, you're like, shit, I don't know what to do. I'm level 100. Like, what's the thing to do now, right? Because this game doesn't have like a direct go mapping, right? Like PoE, for example, has a different flow to it. So I do have a huge written doc available for you that you can check out in the description of that video, as well as I go through all this information in the video. And then we also have a link to the Hero Siege helper. This has a shitload of information on it, from different affixes that you can get on it, on items, different keys and what they do, different dungeons and what's in them. There's a build simulator that he's working on for the website. Really cool website. I do recommend that you check it out and give it a bookmark. I have a link to this video in the description, giving you information on how this whole website works. And then last, I will have a link to all of my build guides for season 6 in the description of the video. That way you can check out any of my content if you're looking for your next build. Yeah, so with that being said, that is going to wrap up the Quickslash Samurai in season 6 of Hero Siege. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all future Hero Siege related news and content. I am going to be live on Twitch at twitch.tv/GraxyTV working on, I think we're going to be working on EXO next. So come check us out, come say hi. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.